Okay, so let's take a look at our embroidery screen. I'm just going to bring up a design. Let's go into our first one here, and we'll bring up the daisy. Okay. So now I have the embroidery screen here. So let's put the hoop on our machine. So it's censored, that the sensor has noticed that I put the hoop on, and it does a little movement of the arm to ensure that I have positioned it properly. So let's go over the left side of our screen. So here's my tension. Now we saw that in our setting, but I can actually change the setting for what I'm stitching right now. You can just tap on that, and we can either take the slider dial up or down, plus or minus. And if I change it, you'll notice it has the yellow around this icon. Just touch it and it goes back to the default. So I can just touch the next one, or I can close this window. Let's go to here. So I need to tell the machine that I am using the cut work. So you'll notice here there is a white box around this icon. If I had not changed it, it will not even let me go to this stitch plate. So it's smart enough to know that I put this one in. Your screen's going to tell you if you've not changed your stitch plate. So I have a standard needle in here. These are for twin needles, and of course you cannot use a twin needle in embroidery. This machine is smart enough to give you that error warning sound. In fact, all of these twin needles, so 2.0, 2.5, and 3.0 is the distance between the two needles on the twin needle. And this is a wing needle. It's used for heirloom sewing. So again, this is telling me I can only use an embroidery needle, and I can only use the stitch plate. Excellent. So let's go. I can go to the next menu. Now I've already shown you that you can have two types of feet on this machine. I currently have the JL on this machine. The JX is used for thicker fabrics. So it's telling me this is a true embroidery expert. Used without dual feet again, yes, embroidery or cut work. So I'm going to select the green check. You'll notice the green check is beside the JL foot, and I'm good to go. Now with this machine, you get 3 hoops, large, medium, and small. Always try to use the smallest hoop possible when you're embroidering. Don't use a large hoop when your design is in fact small. The more fabric in the background you have showing that is not going to be embroidered, you can have some stitch quality issues with that. So use the hoop appropriate for that project. So the embroidery arm on this machine has determined I'm using the large hoop. And how it does that is that it has a little chip on the arm, and I'll just take this out to show you. So this area on your hoop has coding on that tells your machine what hoop you have inserted into your embroidery machine. So do not scratch this area. Take good care of it to make sure that no damage happens to this. And that is what tells this machine that I actually had my large hoop on here. I'm just going to slip my hoop back in. Now let's take a look at these options. I call this the part button. And when I tap it, it actually moved my hoop and the needle of my machine to the center of this hoop. This is called the parking one. So it's asking me to remove my hoop. And my arm has moved. This is what you use for packing up your machine. So say you're going somewhere and you need to take your embroidery unit with you. You want to pack it up. And what will happen is that your embroidery arm will go out to the far left and the arm mechanism will go to the top of the embroidery unit. Very important to do. Just don't leave your embroidery arm in the same position you had when you finished embroidering it. So I'm going to go ahead and put my arm back on. So I'm going to go ahead and put the hoop back on. So you'll notice that we have arrows on the inside of this hoop that will always center my hoop in the middle of this design. Now there's a little set of crosshairs here. So here's the center of my design. And when I pushed this button here, it moved my hoop and the needle to the center of the design. I always love to have my crosshairs on because that visually tells me where the center of my design is. And when you're embroidering, that is very important to have. Now this one here, I can enable that. So I have my crosshairs on, and this is the center of my design. I'll show you more options with this button once we get into moving this design around. Okay, so let's get out of this menu. Now, I've already seen up here that I have the appropriate stitch plate on. So now let's take a look at our design screen here. So the bottom left-hand corner is telling me it's going to take 20 minutes to stitch this out. And here are my measurements. Now, Bernette is a Swiss company, so it's going to be in metric. Here is my design. Now, I can hit the plus magnifying. This will be my source window. It's telling me that I'm actually looking in this area here. Now, you'll notice I can literally drag this window around my source window. And here is the magnification. So as I move this source window around, you can see this changes. So almost like source destination. So I can move it to the bottom of my daisy, and I'm only seeing the magnified view of that. My hand, my finger, I can move this around. Now with this one, as I move my source window over here, it's moving here. This one is I'm going to move, and then it updates. Okay, let's take a look at our right-hand side here. Embroidery works in layers. You can have many layers to an embroidery. So I could add monogramming to this. The monogramming would be one embroidery or one layer, and the flower would be another layer. So you can add embroidery designs, and every time you add a design, it will be another layer. So we're going to practice this later when we're adding lettering. This eye up here brings up a whole bunch of additional information.